Eerily haunting true stories about remote abandoned locations rich in history. Come with us in our travels from state to state, if you dare.
Be the last time anybody sees us alive. I don't know where she has us, but we're gonna get fucking killed.
Hello? Gina, there is a beehive over there. Do you see that in the hole?
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Me too.
It's been really cold. I know
I'm freezing.
last week you were talking about freezing when it was dipping, right below the 70 level. We're at 69, 68. But I have to say the last couple days we've gone down into the 50s.
Well, when
I
leave for work at like 5:45 in the morning. And for the last 3 mornings, it's been between 43 and 46 degrees when I leave for work.
That's freezing for us Californians.
It's very, very cold.
I don't function in the cold.
So yeah, it's been a little cold here.
Yes.
To say the least.
But I have to tell you something really exciting.
Okay.
I got mobbed at Starbucks because of our podcast. Okay, maybe it wasn't a mob, but I got recognized.
It was exciting.
I got recognized. I was working the drive-thru, and a customer came up in their car, and just off my voice, she said, "I recognized your voice. You do that podcast with Gina." And I was like, "Oh, I do." And she's like, "I recognized your voice." And I'm like, "Oh." And I was so busy that evening that I didn't even have time to turn around and ask her if she knew Gina. I didn't care. I just turned around to my coworkers and said, "I just got recognized for my podcast." Didn't even want to know.
Right.
But the next day, Gina bursted my bubble by telling me she knows her. But I was still excited.
Shout out to Roxy. Hi, Roxy.
She was really cute. Yeah. She's like, I knew you worked at Starbucks, but I didn't know it was this Starbucks.
Yeah,
like,
she came.
I have her stalking me. She was trying to find me at every Starbucks.
No, she was so cute. She came to my classroom. She's like, "I saw your friend. I was driving through the drive-thru." She's like, and I heard her voice, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I know that voice."
That's funny.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, she's one of our 100 subscribers to YouTube.
Yes, we just realized tonight that we've hit 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Yes, triple digits.
Yes, so we're so excited.
We
That's
are
like so exciting. I know to
We
some
are.
people
Thank you.
100, like some people are celebrating like 7 million.
I know.
And we're at 100, but like
I feel like we hit 7 million.
but we've only been doing this for 2 months.
It is true. And I never thought we'd get to this point.
No, and I don't even know 100 people. So
I don't either.
I don't even, and we're like answering comments from people we don't even know.
I love it. Keep the
So
comments coming.
Yeah. So thank you to all the people that have commented and left suggestions.
Yes. We
and,
appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, it's amazing. And please keep doing what you're doing. So
Yes, thank you.
yeah.
So
I wanted to bring up something that I had meant to bring up and I forgot. So on a Patreon episode, we had, I don't know how many of you out there listen to Rare From Radio. I know a handful of you do, but Shannon and I made a song for Heidi, and
we did.
and I meant to play it on a Patreon episode
With
for her,
Heidi.
and
Well, it's my fault because I did jump the gun. And I showed her it. I showed her it prior to
Yeah.
it, but then when we actually had her on,
we didn't use it.
I never used it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I use it now?
Yeah, so
Is that our-
so this was our song that we made for Heidi.
Heidi's name drop. Because we didn't have the ability to get the actual music and sound. So we ad-libbed it, and I thought we did pretty good.
I think so.
I think we're pretty on it. Spot on.
Yeah. I
So-
think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then just one more little thing. I wanted to give my friend A Young a shout out because she came through with a pretty sweet gift.
So cute.
Yeah. I'm really digging it. It's super cool.
The twins.
Yeah, many of you know I'm a huge fan of The Shining. So, and the twins, the Greedy twins are.
No, really, we couldn't tell. Wait a second, where's my head?
Yeah.
I don't even know which direction things are
I know
going.
everything's backwards,
like,
right?
yeah.
Everything's backwards, but
So,
yeah. So shout out to her. So
oh, and can we just make a correction too on one of our Patreon episodes when we kept mispronouncing? Well, it's my fault. We kept saying Krampus, and it's actually Krampus.
yeah.
So that's on me. My bad.
And what was the real banger that you said in the Fort Bridger episode this week? Ferocious.
My ferocious. But you know what? I think that should go in the dictionary. And I think, every year Webster adds new words.
Yeah, this one,
Mr. Webster.
This
ferocious.
This year, I just saw it today. It's goblin mode. Goblin mode. You know what it means?
No.
I know a lot of people that suffer from it. People who have gotten lazy over COVID from working at home.
New things get added all the time.
Yep, it's called goblin mode. So I think maybe ferocious will be
I think if
year.
I keep using ferocious, as in it's horrible, it's ferociously horrible. Ferocious. So please, let's get that one going.
Okay. Sorry, guys. We're a little bit of a train wreck tonight. Shannon's back to having her hot flashes. I don't know if you guys noticed. She's wearing Johnny's T-shirt tonight. I mean, not the one that he was wearing. She didn't take it off his back. No. But
I was really cold coming over here. I told you it was really, really cold. But, a couple sips of coffee in me. And then all of a sudden, I can't handle
I'm
it.
sweating. I'm hot.
Yeah.
So
I could not handle it.
I had to give her one of Johnny's shirts. So
we have
So she's an Anaheim Ducks fan tonight.
I am. Just tonight.
She's a hockey fan.
Go Kings. No, just kidding, Johnny.
Oh, man.
I know.
We're going to have to edit that out. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
But we have a big one today.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we have to maybe one day sit down and do like a disclaimer, because I never know really what to cover on the disclaimer, just knowing that this is probably an episode not for anyone under the age of 18.
Correct.
Some topics may be covered. So if you are under the age of 18, you need to stop listening now. I just feel like
anyone that is sensitive to anything. This obviously is a true crime episode. It involves murder and murder of children, and so yeah, it's a hard one to get through. So yes, if you are sensitive to any of that, then obviously this probably is not the episode.
Please. So what are we covering today?
So today we are going to cover the Chino Hills Massacre.
We got a chance to go up there.
We did.
And
we
visit
got a
the
chance
location.
to actually go up, and we're gonna.
It's kind of heavy.
Yeah, it was. We're gonna cover some things that are close to us. As you guys know, we told you last week that we're gonna be traveling to Texas and to New Orleans in a couple weeks. But in the meantime, we're gonna try to hit up some places that are here local to us that we can go to before that. And so this is one that I had actually heard about a while ago. It's actually happened in the 80s, and it's been something that I've just known a couple things here and there about, but I've never really taken like a deep dive on this before.
And it kind of jogged our memory, because remember I was talking to my coworker and she's like, I live, have you ever been up to the house in Chino, and I'm like, no, because she knows that I do this podcast. And she kind of filled me in a little bit about it. So I went to Gina. I said, hey, and she goes, yeah, you know what? I think that one sounds familiar to me.
I think it sounded familiar to me because this is a case that Kim Kardashian has been actively working on. So
yes,
it was kind of in the news for a little bit. And so, yeah, so I just heard tidbits here and there. And so once I started actually doing research, I do want to I listened to a couple YouTube videos, a lot of podcasts on it. However, I always go back to True Crime Garage. The guys from True Crime Garage. I don't know if you guys, any of you listen to it. It's a pretty popular true crime podcast. But
Check it out if you haven't.
Yeah, those guys, they do their research, and so that's one that I really dove into a lot to get most of the research that I had to cover for this case.
Well, because when we went out there, we were trying to go off the address that was in the 911 call. We were trying to find it.
Yeah.
And we could not find it.
We couldn't find it. And it was True Crime Garage.
It was the True Crime Garage address that helped us locate it. And it was also give credit to a YouTuber, and I don't even remember the name, but I remember watching his video.
Yeah.
And
of him actually
walking up there.
Walking up to the house, because it's not easy to find. I don't know how many of you are local that listen, but it is not an easy house to find.
It's kind of like behind a gated community. It's in the back. It's like it's not a gated community. I don't want to say that. The house has a actual gate to go up to the property. Right. So you can't really drive up to the front of it. It's not in a neighborhood where it's like, oh, house, here we go. It's kind of in one of those hillside type
ranches.
Neighborhoods.
It's like a lot of horse property. So the properties they're huge, acres and acres. So it's not houses that are close together. So we were out there hiking up and down hills, and it was a mission, but we found it. So we will definitely have some pictures and some videos of us when we were doing that. And it was a hard house to find.
And I just want to put it out there. We were still very respectful of the neighborhoods. We never go on anybody's property. I mean, the house is occupied. We kind of stayed on the trails and kind of looked at it from there. We're never going to be, intrusive.
Of course not.
So I just want to make that clear.
And I believe this house, I may be wrong, but I believe that this house in particular, there's two houses that were involved, but the house where the murders occurred, I believe, was vacant or abandoned pretty much up until a few years ago, because I thought up until recently, I thought it was still abandoned, but it's not. Yeah. There are people that are living there. So
yeah, and it's funny because now I'm a little confused. Is it the house which one was really abandoned? Is it the house that the murders occurred in, or was it the house
other one? I think that other one is still. Well, I'll get into it, because that was actually a thing that I kind of flip-flop back and forth, and True Crime Garage kind of. That's one of the things that they really touched on. So
well, let's get started. Yeah.
So I'm going to try to make this as not confusing as possible. So I am going to just kind of introduce the family first, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So this family is the Ryan family, and the father is Doug Ryan, and he was a Marine, and then he went on to be a military police officer. And then the mother, her name is Peggy Ryan, and Peggy was raised around horses. That was like her life and her passion. And she got her very first horse at age 12, and her mother also gifted her many horses. She loved to train them and enter them into competitions. And then later on in life, she went on to be a chiropractor like her mom. So her mom's a chiropractor. Doug and Peggy, they met and married in 1970. So they met each other and were married shortly after. November 9th of 1972, they had their first daughter, Jessica.
1 year after my birth.
Right? And then in mid-1973, they moved to Santa Ana, California. And by this time, they already had 5 to 6 horses, and their neighbors... it sounds like their neighbors were starting to complain. It doesn't say about what. I'm thinking maybe the smell. I don't know. I don't see Santa Ana as being like a horse property area. Yeah.
Well, who knows back in the 70s, but
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Neighbors
I
were
don't
complaining.
Yeah. So in 1974, they moved their family to Chino Hills, California. And by this time, they had another child named Joshua, who was an infant at this time. And this community that they moved to is that of Arabian horse breeders. And we saw that it's all horse property.
Gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's really, really pretty. But I guess the area is known to breed Arabian horses, which I don't even know what that is because I'm not.
It's a type of horse. Like, there's a Mustang.
I'm terrified of horses. So I don't, yeah, as much of an animal lover as I am, I'm terrified of horses.
She did walk up to some horses in Wyoming.
I did, which
Took a
I was
picture in front
shocked.
of 'em.
Yeah. So this area in Chino Hills is all ranches. And this house in particular sits on top of a hill and it overlooks all of the neighbors' ranches. So from this house, you can look down and you can see all of your neighbors. This house sits at 2943 English Place. Now there's an English Road and there's an English Place. This house sits at 2943 English Place in Chino Hills, California. So on the evening of Saturday, June 4th, 1983, Josh's friend, Christopher Hughes, he spent the night at the Ryan home. Christopher's mom allowed him to do so under the circumstances that he would be home early the next morning to go to church. So she, said, you can stay the night at your friend's house, but you have to be back first thing in the morning. That evening, the Ryan family also attended a potluck dinner with fellow horse enthusiasts. So it was said to be that there was about 100 people at this dinner in attendance, and it was held at the home of George and Valerie Blade in Chino Hills, California also. So that night at the party, the son of George and Valerie had also asked his mom if he could stay the night. And she said no because they had family visiting or for some reason he wasn't allowed to stay the night. So around 9:30 p.m., the Ryans, along with Christopher Hughes, returned to their home on English Place. So Chris and Josh were in Josh's room in sleeping bags. Jessica was in her bedroom. Doug Ryan, the dad, he stayed in the living room watching TV until approximately 11 p.m. and then he joined his wife, Peggy, in bed after that. The following morning, Mary Ann Hughes, who is Christopher Hughes' mother, she started getting concerned when Chris didn't show up at home to go to church. So she called the Ryan home several times, but only got a busy signal. Around 9 a.m., she decided that she was going to go to the Ryan's home because she continued to get this busy signal. She noticed that the barn door was closed and that it didn't look like the horses had been fed or there had been any activity. She also noticed that she saw only one vehicle, the truck. The family station wagon was not there, so the Ryans had two cars.
Two vehicles.
Yeah, two vehicles, a truck and a station wagon. The truck was the only thing in the driveway. So she went up to the door and she knocked several times. However, there was no answer. So this is at 9 o'clock in the morning. So around 11:30 a.m., 2.5 hours later, the dad went back to the Ryan home. Now, what happened in these 2.5 hours, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess maybe they're still giving them time to come home, whatever the case may be.
Maybe
So,
they thought they went straight to the church. Maybe.
Yeah,
and then
I don't
went to church.
know. I could
Yeah.
not. I couldn't find what happened, but that's a big
Chunk of time.
right there. So Mr. Hughes went to the kitchen door and he looked inside and tried to open it, and the door was locked. So he continued to walk around the house until he got to the sliding glass door, and this door, this sliding glass door that he's looking into, it leads into the Ryan's master bedroom. So he looks in, and when he looks inside, he sees a body of his son along with Mr. and Mrs. Ryan. And he also sees Josh, the Ryan's son. He notices that Josh appears to be moving, so he starts to motion to him and call him over to, hey, can you come open the door so I can help you? Josh is unable to move at this time because of his injuries, but I don't think that Mr. Hughes knew at this time
The extent
the
of the
extent
injury.
of his
Yes.
the extent of his injuries. He then decides, okay, I'm gonna go back to the kitchen door, the door that he initially went to, and he ends up kicking the door in. So he then walks in the house and he sees, obviously, the entire family has been murdered, and Josh is just barely clinging to life at this point. So he starts to ask Josh, you know, who did this?
And how old's Josh at this time again?
Josh is 8 years
8
old.
years old. Okay.
And Mr. and Mrs. Ryan are 41 years old.
Okay.
After he starts asking him, you know, who did this, he quickly realizes that Josh is unable to speak because his throat has been slit from ear to ear. It was said that the thing that saved him was that he actually stuck his fingers in his neck to stop the bleeding.
At 8 years old.
And he was there for 11 hours.
Knowing to do that.
Yeah, he was there for 11 hours doing that, and he survived. So he was obviously unable to talk. He tries to talk, but nothing's coming out. And Mr. Hughes tries to use the phone to call for help, but their phone is not working. So he drives to a neighbor's house because, again, it's not like walking next door and knocking on your neighbor's door.
Huge properties.
You have to drive to your neighbor's house. So he drives to a neighbor's house and he calls for help. And that is the address that we heard
That is given.
That's given on the 911 call. He uses the neighbor's address. So he calls for help. The police arrive and they find Doug, Peggy, and Jessica Ryan dead, along with Josh's friend, Christopher Hughes. Josh was laying on his side, his eyes open, but he was unresponsive. Josh was airlifted to Loma Linda University Hospital, and he was in critical condition. And at one point, his blood pressure was 0/0.
Wow.
So
He's not even,
yeah, pretty much dead.
his
at
blood's
this
not
point.
even pumping.
Nothing.
Yeah.
But he, you know, he
Survived.
survives. He survives. There's a lot of controversy about this. Josh tells his side of the story. This is his account of what happened right after.
Yeah, because I heard that he couldn't even talk. Like when they were interviewing him, it was
Yeah.
more like squeezing of the hands of the.
They did. They used, they would squeeze his hand. They would tell him to squeeze their hands.
For answers,
And then this
yeah.
one in particular was a clinical social worker, and she was the first person to interview him that afternoon in the hospital, in the emergency room, actually. And they had written stuff on a board. He would point to things, yes or no, asking how many people were there, so forth. She asked him to point. Since he wasn't able to speak, using this method, Josh would tell them that there was 3 white men in the house at the time of the attack. Later on,
Because it looks like with all those people in the house, that it had to be more than one person.
well,
I mean,
and that's, you know, that's part of this whole
the
thing
case.
is that there's one man on death row that has been charged with this. But as we get into the coroner's reports and stuff like that, that's kind of the gruesome part. But unfortunately, I'm going to read it just because it explains a lot. And I'm still, I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
You're on the fence on.
I really
who it is.
am on the fence about, you know, if one person could do this.
Yeah, because I saw an interview with Josh's grandmother, the mother of Peggy, and she was saying that they were very strong, tall, very healthy. That she's like, my daughter would like one
I
person
think she described her daughter as like 5'8",
strong,
and the
working
dad
with,
was like a military police.
over 6 feet, and
Yeah.
they're like, she just could not picture like
One person coming
being
into
able
the
to come
house
in
and doing
and
this. So later on June 5th, which is the day after, a San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputy interviewed Josh in the emergency room. And in that interview, Josh says again that there was 3 white men in the house at the time of the murders. In another interview, an hour later, he identifies the men as possibly being Hispanic, between the ages of 18 to 20 years old, and driving a Chevy Impala. He also says that the attack took place between 4 and 5 a.m. Now, you have to keep in mind, number one, this is an 8-year-old. So I don't
Yeah.
know, like, how many of you have been around 8-year-olds, but I don't, to say, like, between 4 or 5 a.m., between 4 and 5 a.m., that they're driving a Chevrolet Impala. So the day of the murder, this happened at night, obviously, but that day, there were 3 men that had come to their house looking for work.
Yes.
So they're not sure if maybe that's what he's remembering.
That's the memory he's having.
They don't know if maybe he's remembering maybe the first responder that came to help him. He suffered so much head trauma at this point that they're not, he doesn't. And now as an adult, he's even saying, I wish I knew what happened, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't think he has a memory.
I'm going to get into the wounds that they suffered. So Doug Ryan, the dad, he had 37 separate wounds, some from an axe or a hatchet. Some came from a knife. He had 5 stab wounds in his skull, and they were in a tight pattern, meaning that his head was stationary when these wounds were inflicted. And it also happened in, in rapid succession.
So just
one after the other.
Okay.
And these all happened while he was kneeling down at the side of the bed. One area in his skull was consistent with being struck by a blunt side of the hatchet or the axe. His right middle finger was amputated by a chopping blow and was later found on the floor inside of the Ryan's bedroom closet. He had a cut on his right forearm that went all the way to the bone. One stab wound penetrated his sternum, severing his heart, and one punctured his lung. There were marks on one of his cheeks indicating that it was sliced. Before he died, he was stabbed on the left side of his neck, severing his carotid artery and cutting his trachea. He has defensive wounds and wounds to his hands and his forearms, which kind of show that he, was trying to fight a little bit. And I'm reading this. I know it's hard to hear, but this is going to play a big part in this whole who they say
Who done it?
Yeah. So the mom, Peggy Ryan, she suffered 32 identifiable wounds, primarily on her head, neck, and chest area. 3 chopping wounds on her head were consistent with her standing. So they happened when she was standing up. She also had a defensive wound on her right hand. The little girl, Jessica Ryan, she suffered 46 wounds consisting of chopping, stabbing, and incision wounds. The wound to her neck resulted in massive bleeding, and in 30 to 60 seconds would have resulted in death in only a few minutes. So it sounds like they all, especially her,
died pretty quickly.
Died quickly. So 3 wounds on her chest were delivered in rapid succession and would have been done in the position she was found. She also suffered a series of carving wounds on her chest, which were all done post-mortem. So they carved stuff into her after she died. The patterns were consistent of an ice pick or a nail. Most of Jessica's wounds were done after she had passed or was already unconscious. She did not have any defensive wounds, and they think that that's because she died so quickly. Christopher Hughes is the little boy's, the little boy's friend. He suffered 25 wounds, a chopping wound to his right wrist, and it went through the bone, almost severing his wrist from his forearm. He also suffered a chopping wound to his right hand, which is consistent with a defensive wound. Several of his wounds were inflicted after he passed also. So it sounds like these people
they kept going. It just sounds like they kept going even after they passed away. So,
Joshua Ryan, the only survivor, he had a chopping wound consistent with a hatchet to the top of his head, a stab wound to his throat, and a hatchet wound near his left ear. The coroner states that all these wounds for each one of these victims happened within 1 minute for each of them. So they all died within minutes of being attacked. But this all took like a minute.
But a minute's a long time if you're thinking about it.
But for one person?
Yeah, for one person. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like to go that fast and that quickly for one person in 1 minute. I'm going to say that in no way am I making comparison, but I'm just going to say how tired I get from just moving my arms. Went to Disneyland yesterday with my daughter. We went on that web slinger, the Spider-Man web slinger at California Adventure, and you have to do the shooting like this, and you're just shooting and shooting. 15 seconds, my arm is like, I couldn't even move it anymore. And I just can't imagine, like, with 4 people, just a minute's a long time.
It is a long time
to be doing that. We say it like it's something so short, but it's really not when you're exercising that much effort. And for one person to go boom, 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 that's 4 minutes.
Well,
right
and
there.
the
just,
thing that I think of is when they're doing this to one person, what are the other people doing?
Exactly.
You would think the dad or the mom or somebody's going to come up and hit them from behind or try to, I don't know.
Especially if you hear that Peggy was standing.
Yeah.
So
and again,
is she running? Is she?
Know.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know.
We weren't there.
So now I'm going to talk about a man named Kevin Cooper. And this is the man who is on death row currently. And has been since this happened. A little bit about him. As a baby, he was adopted. He was abused as a child and ended up running away to escape the abuse, he says. He was brought up in Pennsylvania and had some run-ins with the police while living there. One time being, he was burglarizing a home, and a 17-year-old girl saw him and interrupted him. Wasn't burglarizing her home, but just saw him burglarizing a home. He then took her car. He stole her car. However, he took her with him too. He shoved her in the car and took her too. According to the girl, Kevin beat her and raped her. However, Kevin, he denies this, but he does admit to shoving her into the car and stealing it. He was charged and convicted multiple times with charges of theft, and he would serve time in Pennsylvania on these charges. So he also escaped.
At what age did they say how old he was then when he did that one?
This was early on because he was 25.
Okay.
When
he got arrested for the Ryan murders?
Yes.
Wow, so he was young when this all started. Okay.
Yeah. So he was, so this is, his younger years.
All prior to age 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he escaped multiple times out of custody. And then he moves to California, where he is also charged and convicted of residential burglary and is sentenced to 2 years in prison. At this time, Cooper had been going by the name David Troutman. So he's going by a different name, and this is the name that he is using in prison. So they think in prison his name is David Troutman. They do not know him as Kevin Cooper.
So he's in jail in California under Troutman.
David Troutman, because he's doing this to hide his criminal history of Kevin Cooper in Pennsylvania. Yeah. On June 1st, 1983, which is 3 days prior to the Ryan murder, he was transferred to a minimum security area of the California Institute for Men in Chino Hills, California. On June 2nd, he escaped from prison, which is 2 days before the murders. He flees to a lumber yard where he hides until the sun goes down. And then he walks into a neighborhood where he finds a vacant house who is owned by a gentleman named Larry Lease and 2 brothers, Roger and Kermit Lang. So this is one of the things that I had talked about when I was listening to True Crime Garage when you said about the house. Most of the reports that I read said that it was an abandoned house. However, it was not an abandoned house. It was a vacant house that these gentlemen owned and would from time to time rent it out. So in this house, it wasn't like an abandoned home.
It wasn't empty. It
It had stuff in it. I believe it even had a bed in it. It had food. It had a refrigerator. Like it was stocked because there was actually tenants in there up until the end of May. So the last tenants moved out days before
Cooper showed up.
So
and this is the house that's like 2 down the hill from the Ryan house.
Yeah. So this house sits at the bottom of a hill And then up on top of the hill is where the Ryan house sits. And we have pictures of that house as well. And I believe that house is still vacant, or at this time right now
Might
is
still be
vacant.
vacant.
It did have a car in the driveway, but the house was vacant. So
Or no one was home.
no, yeah. Well, no, because
But it looked pretty
it
like,
looked
empty.
It didn't look lived in. But this house just so happened to be vacant at the time that Cooper happened to find it. So he decides to use this house as his hideout and stay there. So during this time, Cooper is staying there. He's using the restroom. He's showering. He's eating there. He's sleeping there. And it says that at one point he slept in a bed there, but he was afraid because the bed butted up against a window. And he was afraid that people would see in the house that he was in there. So he slept in the closet to hide. Now this house is, it's roughly 126 yards from the Ryan's home. So a little more than a football field.
Yeah.
Which when you look at your well, I mean, at least here in Los Angeles, I don't know. Our neighbors are like, you could stick your arm out the window and touch them. So
You can pass sugar through the windows to each other.
Yeah. From
Some
one of the windows in this house, you have a clear view of the Ryan home. So from this vacant home, you can see. This vacant home had 2 phones in it. So Cooper made calls from this house, one of them being to a Yolanda Jackson, who he called 2 times. One of them was on June 3rd at 12:17 a.m. and this phone call lasted 110 minutes. The second call was at 2:26 a.m. and lasted 4 minutes. The other call was made to a Diane Williams. The first call was made at 11:46 a.m. on June 3rd and lasted 3 minutes, and the second was made on June 4th at 7:53 p.m. and lasted 34 minutes. Now, June 4th is the night that the Ryans were murdered. These women were just friends of his, and he was calling them to ask them for help, and both of them declined. So, according to Cooper, after this last phone call on June 4th at 7:53 p.m. was made, he said that he left. He left the vacant house. He took off, which would put it at about 8:30-ish, something like that. And that's about what time that he says that he left, was between 8 and 8:30. The Ryans returned to their house sometime between 9:30 and 10 p.m. that night. So he says he left at 8:30. An hour later or so is when the Ryans came home. When Cooper was asked where he was going, he said that he was going to Mexico. And what we do know for sure is that on June 5th at 4 p.m., he checked into a hotel in Tijuana under the name Angel Jackson.
But Tijuana, just for people who don't know, is only 2.5 hours away from,
Right.
and probably not even that far away from Chino, maybe 2 hours. We'll say 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And then maybe with traffic, let's say 3 hours, to get
So-
across the border.
yeah. So it was,
So if
it was possible.
if the murders happened in the morning, yeah, I mean,
No, it's definitely a
not-
possibility.
Yeah. It's not like he was there during the murders.
No, but I think what they're trying to state here is he said that that's where he was, and there's actually proof that he was there,
Yeah.
but that doesn't say that he didn't have the time to commit the murders and then go.
flee.
Yeah. So on June 9th, he meets a couple named Owen and Angelica Handy. He introduces himself to the couple as Angel Jackson, because that's the name he's now going by. And he asks the couple for a job on their boat, and they agree to give him one, and they take off for San Francisco. So during this time they're going to San Francisco, the couple sees Cooper with items on him that would later be found out to be items from this vacant house.
Oh, so he's on the boat with them.
He's on the boat with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's working for them, and they're on their way to San Francisco. And they also make a lot of stops along the way, but every time the Handys leave the boat, he stays on the boat. He never leaves. On July 30th, the police get a call to a boat for an attempted rape. This boat just so happened to be docked next to the Handy's boat. The 26-year-old female identified the man that held her at knife point and tried to rape her as Kevin Cooper or Angel Jackson or David Troutman or whatever you want to call him.
How's he able to change his name so
Yeah.
fast? Was it that easy back in the 80s?
Right.
To change your name?
When the cops come for him, he tries to take off, but the cops see him throw an object in the water before he jumps, and he swims to a dinghy, and then he started to row to shore. But the police recovered a knife from the water near the area of these boats. So just to like kind of go over where we're at, because I know it's confusing. This is what he says, that he leaves at 8:30 p.m. on June the 4th from the vacant house. He gets a ride. He goes to Mexico. He's on a boat. He gets in trouble over there for attempted rape of a woman. And now we're in late July. It was said that nothing was stolen from the Ryans' home. But again, I guess that's something like, how do you know? Like something could have been stolen.
A little token, something taken.
But there was nothing big stolen. However, their station wagon was stolen. A week and a half later, it was found in Long Beach. Even if he drove from Chino Hills, if he stole the car from Chino Hills, drove to Long Beach, dumped the car in Long Beach, and then hitchhiked
Found a ride
to Mexico, he still could have made it
Oh yeah, I mean it was a whole
to June 5th.
Yeah,
Like he still
it
could
was
have made it there.
over 24 hours.
Yeah, so there was plenty of time for him to make it there by June 5th at 4 p.m. So in the Ryan home, there was a bloody shoe print that was found on one of the sheets. And this shoe print is from a shoe called a Pro-Ked. And at the vacant house, they find I'm just going to call it the vacant house because they find
The hideaway house.
Right. They find loose tobacco called Roll Right. And apparently this is the type of tobacco that was handed out for free at the prisons.
And wasn't the shoe like a
and the
prison
shoe is
issued?
It's a prison issued shoe. Yes, they're handed out at the prisons. So after finding both of these things, they make the connection because David Troutman or Kevin Cooper had just escaped from prison. So they start to think that he could possibly be a suspect once they start putting all this stuff together. So they end up finding him in Santa Barbara after this alleged rape.
Yeah.
So on June 5th, the day after the murder, a hatchet was found in the immediate area. It was found on English Road.
Down the street, the road you have to come up before you make a left onto English Place.
So the hatchet was covered in blood and it had hair on it consistent with the hair of Doug and Josh Ryan. It was later said by the coroner that the hatchet was consistent with the marks and the wounds left on the victims. So this hatchet is believed to have come from the vacant house that Kevin Cooper was hiding out in. So they're saying that that's where he got the hatchet from. The former tenant of this house that moved out at the end of May, which was only days before the murder, said that when she lived there, there was a hatchet there matching the same description that was left at the house. Now, there was also something found at that vacant house in one of the rooms. However, when they initially searched the house, it wasn't found. So they're saying that maybe this is something that the police have maybe planted. So what was found was a sheath, which is the thing that is from the hatchet, the covering to it, the protective covering for it.
And what did the pictures show? Because didn't they take pictures of the crime scene? So
well, that wasn't the crime scene.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
so initially when they were, going through the vacant house, it wasn't there. But then when they went back, it was. But here's the thing too. You have to think like if you're just going into, and mind you, before the first time that they actually went and looked in this house, it's before they even knew.
Yeah, you don't know what you're looking for.
You don't know what you're looking for.
So
At that
you can
point,
glance over something and not even know it's important.
They're probably looking for an escaped convict at this point. They're not looking for, So could it have been there and they just looked over it? Sure.
Absolutely.
Or could it, it could have been planted. Who knows? Who knows? That's one theory, is that there's been stuff that's been planted, and that's one of the items that they're claiming was that Kevin Cooper is saying was planted. So about a week or so later, when they found the Ryan station wagon, inside the car, they found loose tobacco, the same tobacco that they found in the house. And they also found a regular manufactured cigarette. So in the prisons, they also sold cigarettes. If you had money, then you got to buy whatever brand cigarette you wanted. But if you didn't, then you were issued just this loose tobacco and you rolled your own cigarettes with the prison issued tobacco. There was also blood stains found in the car. So this is another conflicting report. Some reports say that there was blood found in only one area of the car. And then other reports say that there was blood found in up to 3 areas of the car. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but that could mean the difference between one person being in the car versus 2, 3, 4 people being in the car.
Who took the car?
So, but could it be one person that was going to different places in the car? Who knows, But again, this is, conflicting reports. These cigarettes that were found, one of them was found in the crevice of the front passenger seat, and they also found the manufactured cigarette in the front seat. So they ran saliva tests on both of these cigarettes and discovered that, and you got to remember back at this time, they didn't have DNA.
Yeah.
So they're just running whatever test they have available. So they ran a saliva test. The person who smoked both of these were non-secretors. And I know you're going to ask me what a non-secretor is.
I don't know. I have no clue what you're saying. What's a non-secretor?
So a non-secretor is a person that does not secrete their blood type antigens into their body fluids like saliva and mucus.
So some of us do?
Some do and some don't. 20% of the population are non-secretors. So
the rest of us are?
Yes.
Okay.
So a very small percentage of the population are non-secretors, and whoever smoked these cigarettes are non-secretors.
And Kevin Cooper
is a non-secretor. Also, the manufactured cigarette was found to have type A blood on it, and Kevin Cooper is type A.
Type A?
Yes.
I was going to say.
There we go. The car was also, just like another fact, the car was not hot wired. So the car was started with the keys.
Okay.
And so they're suggesting that whoever stole this car had the keys. So that would suggest
inside the house?
That suggests that they were in the house.
I should be a detective. Go on.
So Kevin Cooper, his trial was eventually moved to San Diego because of the anger in the community. The trial begins October 23rd, 1984. During this trial, Cooper decides to take the stand and testify. And this is when he admits to a lot of things. Like he's not saying that he's not guilty of any of these things. He admits that he was in the vacant house around the time of the murders. He obviously admits that he escaped from prison. He admits to having the roll right tobacco. But he denies these murders, obviously. He says, and still to this day claims his innocence. He claims that the night of the murders that he left the vacant house, he walked down the hill to the road and started flagging down cars for directions to Mexico, or was asking for a ride. He was asking somebody for directions or for a ride. February 7th, 1985, the jury begins deliberation, and on February 19th, 1985, the jury convicts Kevin Cooper of murdering Christopher Hughes, Doug and Peggy Ryan, and their daughter Jessica. He's also convicted of the attempted murder of Joshua Ryan, who is the lone survivor. He is then sentenced to death, and Kevin Cooper is still on death row almost 40 years later. And to this day, he still is fighting, saying that he's innocent. And at one point in 2004, he was almost executed. He was hours away from execution, and somebody stepped in and said that there needs to be more, things done for this case, and it needs to be looked into more. Some of the evidence that, he admits that he went to this vacant house around the time of the murder. The cigarettes that were found in the station wagon obviously came from the prison. The shoe print, the hatchet that was found near the home, that was more than likely the murder weapon. There was smudged fingerprints on there, but there was no prints that they could identify. The sheath to this hatchet was found in the vacant house where Cooper admits that he was staying. And then, according to the owners of this vacant house, they also said that there were knives missing from the house. So originally, 8-year-old Joshua's story was that there were 3 men in the house. First, he said they were white men, then later said that they were Hispanic men. Then he goes on to later change his story again. And he says that he saw one single dark figure with bushy hair. And we'll put a picture up of Kevin Cooper, and he definitely does have bushy hair at that time. He matches that description. But again, you go back to is this because now he's heard this, or is this the trauma?
He saw it on the news.
Yeah. It sounds like, reading all of this evidence, how could you not say that it's him?
Based on what you presented, I'm I'm all in. It's him.
But let me read Joshua's in 2005. This during a court hearing. This was his statement, and this just goes to show you years later how his views have changed a little bit. The first time I met Kevin Cooper, I was 8 years old, and he slit my throat. He hit me with a hatchet and put a hole in my skull. He stabbed me twice, which broke my ribs and collapsed one lung. I lived only because I stuck 4 fingers in my neck to slow the bleeding down, but I was too weak to move. I laid there for 11 hours looking at my mother, who was right beside me. I know now he came through the sliding glass door and attacked my dad first. He was lying on the bed and was struck without warning with the hatchet and a knife. He was hit many times because there was a lot of blood on the wall on his side of the bed. My mother screamed, and Cooper came around the bed and started hitting her. Somehow my dad was able to struggle between the bed and the closet, but Cooper bludgeoned my dad to death with the knife and the hatchet, stabbing him 26 times and axing him 11. One of the blows severed his finger, and it landed in the closet. My mother tried to get away, but he caught her at the bottom of the bed. He stabbed her 25 times and axed her 7. All of us kids were drawn to the room by my mom's screams. Jessica was killed in the doorway with 5 axe blows and 46 stabs. I won't say how many times my friend Chris was stabbed and axed, not because it's not important, but because I don't want to hurt his family. I don't want to hurt his family in any way, and they are here. After Cooper killed everyone and thought he had killed me, he went over to my sister, he lifted her shirt and drew things on her stomach with a knife. Then he walked down the hallway and opened the refrigerator. He had a beer. I guess killing so many people can make a man thirsty. This was in 2005.
Did he go to therapy and maybe helped him remember, or was it based on
I don't know, because
reports?
you read things about how people go through what is it called? Hypnosis, and they help to remember. I don't know if he's been through any of that. He seems like a very soft-spoken
And I wonder if it kind of put the pieces together. If you're old enough, you can read the reports, you can read what happened, and
how
it
many
jogs your
time-
memory.
And
I mean, maybe it brought back, like, you know what? Okay, because to me, it sounded like he did have a little bit more details than what you originally read. Like there was more blood on that side of the bed.
That's very descriptive, and I don't think he's going to remember how many times each person
No,
was stabbed.
that was
and
definitely
axed
from
him.
the report.
But yeah, I mean, it just makes you wonder, you know.
But I'm saying, like, how he was lured to the room from his mother's screams.
And I think that that's been something that he's kind of said, that's one of the things that he vividly remembers is hearing his mom scream, and how that's why his sister came into the room, and that's why him and his friend came into the room, is because they heard her screaming. I don't know other than that.
So this case is still, or it's pretty much closed?
Well, I mean, he's on death row.
Okay.
So there were a couple reports about people seeing this station wagon. So there's a couple that said that they saw 3 white men driving the station wagon close to the road that leads to the Ryan house. There were no eyewitnesses saying that anybody to the likeness of Kevin Cooper was driving this vehicle. There's also an eyewitness that says that they saw the station wagon being driven the following day. So this would clear Kevin Cooper, because we know by this time he was in Mexico. There's another woman who she said that she was scared of being identified, but if needed be, she would testify under oath to this. She states that she saw 3 white men driving the station wagon. They were driving erratically. She was driving with her grandmother, and these men almost crashed into her car. She says that her grandmother was so scared that she got out a piece of paper and wrote down the license plate number of the station wagon. Hours later, when the murders were being broadcast on television, the newscaster reported the Ryan station wagon had also been stolen and gave the license plate number, and that when they matched it to the one that her grandmother had written down, it was exactly the same.
Wow.
So that's 3 people that have seen 3 white men driving this station wagon. In the daughter Jessica's hand, she had a clump of hair in her hand.
Yes, I read that.
So, and this is another thing that there's conflicting. Everybody says that it's blonde hair, but when you go and look at it, it's not blonde hair. It's brown hair.
But
it ended up that it was another victim's hair.
It was the victim's hair, yeah.
Now we're going to talk about somebody else. So this is a man named Lee Furrow. On June 9th, so just 5 days after the murder, there was a woman who called the sheriff's department by the name of Diana Roper. She claims that her boyfriend, Lee Furrow, came home on the early hours of June 5th in an unfamiliar station wagon. He was not alone, but she did not know or recognize any of the people that were in this station wagon. She said that they never came in the house. They all stayed in the car, but she didn't know who they were. Lee came home to change his clothes. She said that he was wearing tan-colored bib overalls and no shirt. He was not wearing a shirt underneath. However, when he left, he was, but when he came home, he was not. He took these overalls off and he left them on the floor of the closet. She said that when he left, he did not return for a very long time. Diana Roper ends up turning these overalls over to the sheriff's department because she discovered that they have blood on them. When she turns these into the sheriff's department, she not only tells them that they have blood on them, but she tells them that she thinks that her boyfriend may be involved with the murders at the Ryan home. She said that she also claims that the hatchet matches one that's missing from their garage. These overalls were never given to Cooper's defense team, nor were they ever tested. A few months later, they were actually thrown away in a dumpster. And the sergeant that received these says that he reached out on several occasions to turn these over as evidence, but nobody ever came to pick them up. Lee Furrow had been released from prison earlier that year for being involved in a murderous gang. He was given an early release for turning over state's evidence against the leader of this gang. Furrow had also told a friend that while he was in this gang, that he killed a girl, he cut her body up and threw it into the Kern River. So the Ryan station wagon that turned up a week after the murders was found in Long Beach, which just so happens to be near Lee Furrow's stepmother. Supposedly, the guy of this murderous gang that he belonged to, Clarence Ray Allen, he also raised Arabian horses. And this was, again, just like Peggy Ryan. So they're saying that maybe Allen may have threatened to kill Peggy over a horse sale that had gone wrong. And I guess, again, this is all speculation. There are also a few eyewitnesses that say that they saw 3 white men at a bar at some point after the murders, and at least one of them was covered in blood. These were just identified as 3 white men. So nobody said that nobody's identifying Lee Furrow as being one of these people, but it makes you wonder, did he come home, change his clothes, and then go back out with these people in the station wagon to go to a bar?
Yeah. And I don't know if you have it there, but I was going to ask you about a shirt that was found, because you had mentioned that.
Yeah. Oh, so there was a T-shirt that was found on the side of the road after the murders, and it was collected. So this Lee Furrow, his girlfriend, Diana Roper, the one that called, she is claiming that that's the T-shirt that he was wearing when he left the house in the morning. She said that she bought the shirt for him, and that's how she knows that it absolutely belongs to him. The only problem being is that this shirt contains the blood of Kevin Cooper and Doug Ryan.
Could there be a connection with Kevin Cooper and Lee knowing each other?
That's what I thought. But here's the thing, too. So Kevin Cooper is saying that this is another piece of evidence that was planted, because when they did test this, he's saying that they planted his blood on this. He said, this blood did not come from my veins or my artery. It came from a tube, and it was planted on the shirt, and that's what they're going to use to kill me. So when they tested this blood, something called EDTA came out in this blood, and this EDTA is a preservative that's used to preserve blood samples.
In a tube.
Okay. And so, but the problem with that is EDTA is also found in hand creams and laundry detergent. So if this shirt's ever been washed,
yeah,
then it could possibly have traces of that. Or if anybody that's had hand cream on them, it could have traces of that. Lee Furrow has never been charged with anything.
He denies it.
Kevin Cooper is still on death row, and is now, I believe, 64 years old. And he is running out of time, I believe.
Yeah. And what's the connection with Kim Kardashian?
She was trying to get him exonerated. Exonerated. There's just so much evidence, and I feel like the police went wrong. They did a lot of things wrong.
It was the early 80s.
Yeah, things were done differently.
No.
But again,
there's a lot of evidence against him. I have to say, I mean, he has the history. He has, and I'm not saying that everybody who has history is automatically guilty, but if you put all that together with what they found and what his pattern was after the fact, where he's still so brazen enough to try to
but here's the
rape
thing.
somebody else after the fact.
But here's the thing. He had a rap sheet, right? But it was for residential burglary.
But rape is a pretty...
He was never charged with rape.
Yeah, but he was accused of rape.
He was accused of it, but
yeah.
But this other guy killed somebody, chopped her body up, and threw her in the river.
Yeah.
And if you do it once, the chances of you doing it again...
It's just so much evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a tough one.
There's a lot of people who saw... And I'm not saying either way. I'm not saying that I think it was him. I don't know either way. Him. I think this is just the things that people are tossing around, and I guess it could also be the way it's presented to you.
reasonable doubt.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And so to sentence, to put somebody on death row that, there's, I don't know.
That's a
because
tough one.
you think right away, oh, the t-shirt, it has his blood on it.
Yeah.
But then you go back and you look at that like,
well, I mean, I put together the shoes print, the hatchets that are missing, the knives that are missing, the,
he was in that house,
the proximity, tobacco, the car,
But then you see how many accounts were there? There's three different
people,
witnesses that saw 3 white men.
So part of me thinks like, did they all work together?
Yeah, that's
did Lee
honestly
know Cooper?
That's the first thing that came to my mind is how are those two connected?
Thank you. That's where I want to go back to.
Cahoots? Like,
did they ever serve time together? Did they ever something that could have had them cross their paths?
They're both in and out of the system
with or just coincidence, but there's a lot of theories out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I believe in coincidence either.
That's a doozy. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for presenting that. That was a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot and it's confusing. But if you listen to True Crime Garage, they have two episodes they did titled Kevin Cooper back in 2019. So
awesome. And then we can just, please, if you guys have any theories, any additional information.
Honestly, I would love to hear
your thoughts,
everybody's thoughts on this and what they think. And everybody's you're entitled to your own opinion. And honestly, I don't even know if I have an opinion.
I can't even.
I go back and forth. I could go back and forth. So
I can debate myself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Seriously, that's what I was doing when I was reading and I was listening. I was watching all this stuff. I'm like, oh, but this, he totally couldn't have done it. And then I'm like, well, shit, he totally could have done it. So imagine being on that jury.
I know.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to. So yeah, in the comments on Instagram or on YouTube or whatever, we would love to hear your take on this. And if you have any other information or any other details that I got wrong or missed out or whatever, we would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we will see you next week.
Yeah. And make sure you click the like and subscribe. Make a comment,
Yes. And merch is coming. We're getting closer every week. I know we keep saying that, but we are actually in the designing process now. So we're going
to get some samples.
And it's looking very cute. So
yeah. Well, thank you very much to all our Patreons out there too.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure if you'd like to support us on Patreon, we are at 50 States of Madness, and we are also on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, all at 50 States of Madness. And you can listen to the podcast on all platforms.
Absolutely. Thank you so much and have a good week.
Thanks.
Stay safe. Bye.